This video is brought to you by Patreon supporter Alan.
Hello and welcome. It's very clear to see exactly what we have in front of us. We have this courtesy of Patreon provider Alan. Alan sent this in with a couple of different scopes, and this is just the first one that I'm going to throw up on my table. Why the hell not? I haven't had a precision-oriented optic in quite some time, so I'm very excited to get my hands on this. Plus, I've heard a lot of really good things about these Gen 2 BTRs. So without further ado, let's give this box a good once-over and see exactly what we've got. There is all of your specific information that you're going to need to know. This is a first focal plane optic. This does have an MOA reticle. So tracking, it's not going to be 100% ideal, but we'll still be able to get a really good idea of how well at least, stays on track. 34.5 ounces is pretty chunky, and 14.5 inches is pretty big. This is also a 34 millimeter tube, but that's all we got to go. American company is pretty cool. Unfortunately, these are all made in China. Anyway, the boxes are fantastic. They're held in place with little magnets you can see right there. So when you do close this, you get a nice positive click. Top tier boxes as far as I'm concerned. As far as how they package it, you can see we have a very nice arrangement of this very heavy duty dense foam. With this on top of the elevation knob, you can see this thing doesn't really move around. Excellent. With everything out of the way, we can go really quickly through the owner's manual. There shouldn't really be that much information that we're going to need to know in here. This is how you adjust your zero stop. We'll take a look under the turret in just a moment. But it's very straightforward. This does have locking turrets. This is illuminated clearly. And it's got all the nice little features that you would want. It doesn't have a throw lever, but it does have a nice little nub, which honestly, in using this a little bit, is more than sufficient for what we're going to be needing. Well, I guess here we are. So this is it. Right off the bat, it does feel that little bit of chunkiness. They claim to 34.5. Okay, so they're within an ounce or so. I do not have the 6-24 Arken, but I do have the 4-16 to give it some sort of comparison. The Arken is clearly heavier, and the 6-24, if I remember correctly, was a little bit heavier still. And I'm actually going to leave this off to the side because this is going to be one of its main competitors. Because for the price, you find this Athlon for about $600. You find these SH4 Gen 2s for about $500 with some extras. So they'll be about the same, but you're going to get scope caps, you're going to get throw levers, you're going to get bag. There's a lot of cool stuff that comes with the Arken. Arkens, I find, were very good, and I'm going to be curious to see how well this thing is in comparison to it. Right off the bat, it feels really nice. The anodizing on it is smooth. It's a little shiny. As you can see, there is no marking from my nail, or if there is anything, it's very, very minimal. So this will be very easy to clean up if you do get it dirty. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start at the back with a fast focus eyepiece, which does come out a long way. Going to go on a quarter turn. There's a little bit of wiggle there, but very, very minimal. This is basically a brand new optic. Alan used this a little bit from what I can recall, and he was pretty pleased with it. Fast focus eyepiece is okay. We start at 6, go all the way to 24, which, as you can see, is just shy of 180 degrees. So that's actually a little bit better than average. You can hear it rubbing when we go up, and when we go down, not so much. So this has probably got a little bit of shift in there, and something is catching, but it's not binding or anything like that. It's very smooth, with the exception of that little noise. Could be worse, but could be a little bit better. Nitpicking, I know. Illumination control goes from 1 to 6 with offs in between. And this is fine. This is fantastic, actually. Good solid detent, a little bit of wiggle once we're in it, but it pops right out and pops right back in. You don't have to worry about this thing coming loose on you. Under the battery compartment, you can see our standard, very inexpensive multi-leaf spring. Multi-leaf? Yeah. Multi-finger leaf spring, that's what I'll call it. And our 3 standard contacts. I've found that these are fairly reliable and have no real issues. So, again, pretty damn good. Standard CR2032 battery as always. Onto the side focus, we can see this thing goes down to 10 yards, which is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly close. I don't know if I could say incredibly any more than that. It's fantastic if you want to get a really close zero, or if you're using this on a pellet gun, a BB gun, an air rifle, and you want to do a little bit, maybe some varmint shooting in your backyards. Maybe you got rats, you never know. 10 yards is fantastic. Probably the lowest I've seen of any optic. Anyway, this goes all the way up to infinity. And as you can see, it's 180 degrees from minimum to maximum. I don't know if you could hear it, but we have the exact same sound that was coming from the magnification ring. But other than that, it's very smooth and very well damped. Onto these gigantic turrets, you can clearly see that these are in MOA, quarter MOA increments to be exact. And these are locking. Right now they are locked. To disengage the lock, you have to pull up. And this one is pretty tight. Again, basically brand new. And let's give these a twist. Wow. Those sound and feel fantastic. You can clearly see our elevation indicator right there, or our rotation indicator rather. We are one full rotation up from our zero. Lift up again. This thing has a massive amount of adjustability, but I don't know where the zero is. I'm going to zero this for 50 yards like I always do, and we can check it out later. But this thing feels and sounds fantastic. Very little to no wiggle. A little bit right there, but once you go past that, it's a solid, nice, crisp click. Fantastic. Happily, the same can be said for the windage, even though this does unlock a lot easier. There is a little bit more play, but I'm happy to see that they at least have its own proprietary knobs between the elevation and the windage. To get a good idea of what these turrets look like underneath, you take a quarter, or in this case, a nice old token. I forgot where I got this from, but it's probably older than I am. You remove this little screw in the middle. And when I say little, I mean very little. I don't know if I can get that to focus properly, but there's only about 3 threads on there maximum. And that's the only thing that's keeping this thing engaged when you lift up to disengage it. So I'd like to see a couple of more threads on that. That doesn't leave a lot to the imagination. In fact, you can see right there, only the first thread to maybe thread and a half is actually engaging in the bronze reluctor. So I'd be worried, especially with how tight this thing is, about pulling it up and possibly pulling the threads out in time. I don't think it would happen right away, but this is not a very comforting thing to see, especially when you consider you could put a lot of leverage with a quarter like this or a coin like this to tighten this. You could very easily strip out that top thread. So top thread and that little cap aside. So very short threads on the bolt aside. The inside of this reluctor looks fantastic. The knurling job, that's this. So a very short screw aside, the inside of this reluctor looks absolutely fantastic. We have a very, very fine spline right there. So the cap lines up, that's how it indexes. And you have these 3 set screws over here, which adjusts this ring for your zero stop. Now, oddly enough, they have all these set screws around it. I'm sorry, there's 5 set screws. They have all these set screws, and then they have this little Phillips head screw right there holding the actual stop on. So that stop engages with this face for your zero stop. It's not the nicest looking system. I would be much happier if this was about 3 times as long, and I don't see why not, because you already have probably 7 to 8 threads in there. So why not take advantage of that? Come on, Athlon. I don't trust that in the long term. But other than that, it looks pretty good. I'm going to be very careful when I tighten this because I'm terrified of stripping that thing out. Anyway, so we saw what it looks like on the inside, on the outside. Let's see what it looks like to actually be behind it.
I'm going to get right to it. The illumination on this thing is just noticeable during daytime, which is fine for an HPVO. You're not really going to rely on that anyway. Here at 6x at 30 yards, we have a pretty clear image. The fact that this thing will focus all the way as close as 10 yards is frankly pretty astonishing, especially for its magnification range. As we slowly zoom in, we'll take better note of the reticle here, and I have to say I like it. I like it a lot. It's not my favorite, but it's really, really close. The center X is really nice, though I prefer a center dot, but the drops and the holds are very easy to pick up, very easy to see, and very practical. You can clearly make out some chromatic aberration sneaking up into the image around the black power lines and the body of the transformer, and unfortunately that's going to be something that you're going to be noticing throughout most of this video, or in fact the full review coming soon. You just can't help it. Unfortunately, for the price point that this thing comes at, and so far the quality of everything else, something's got to give. Aside from that though, everything is clear and sharp. Let's push it back a little bit further. You can clearly tell I've had this optic for a while, considering the trees haven't even started to bud yet. But how does the image look here at 400 yards at 24x? Well, it looks pretty damn good. Contrast gets a little bit muted, but early morning sun sometimes has that effect. Playing around with the side focus, you can still see we have a very sharp image where it counts, which is in the definition between all of those bricks. Once again, we see some chromatic aberration creeping up along the top part of that wall and the trees behind it. So far, this is looking to be pretty good. It feels really good, it feels like it's made really well, and so far the glass seems to be performing very well given its price point. I'm very excited to see how the rest of this turns out, as I'm sure most of you are. Alan, thank you very much for sending this in for review. Ladies and gentlemen, the full review will be coming on this fairly shortly, so please stay tuned for that. As always, thank you very much for watching. And a huge thank you to my Patreon providers. Without you, this truly wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to help support the channel but don't want to join my Patreon, I completely understand. But you can help by using the affiliate links in the description below. Thanks again for watching.